Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi Dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. In today's analysis, we're looking at a claim that has been circulating among dinar followers, involving a visual comparison reportedly shown to Iraqi citizens. A 25,000 dinar note displayed alongside a 25 dinar note, with the implication that the higher denomination note could effectively become a lower denomination through increased purchasing power. This type of narrative often raises questions about redenomination, currency reform, and potential revaluation. So let's break this down carefully, logically, and based on how monetary systems actually function. First, it's important to understand what is being suggested in this claim. The idea that a 25,000 dinar note would somehow become equivalent to a 25 dinar note is often associated with what economists call a redenomination process. Redenomination is not the same as a revaluation. A revaluation refers to a change in the exchange rate of a currency relative to others, usually under a fixed or managed exchange rate system. Redenomination, on the other hand, involves changing the face value of the currency itself, typically by removing zeros to simplify transactions and improve usability. If Iraqi authorities were to pursue redenomination, it would likely involve introducing a new series of banknotes where, for example, 25,000 old dinars might be exchanged for 25 new dinars. However, this does not inherently increase wealth or purchasing power. It is primarily an accounting adjustment. Prices, wages, and balances would all be adjusted proportionally. So if a loaf of bread costs 1,000 dinars before redenomination, it might cost 1 dinar after, assuming a 1:1 conversion. Now, let's analyze the claim that purchasing power will be added to that 25 dinar equivalent. This is where things require a more nuanced understanding. Purchasing power is not determined by the number printed on a banknote alone. It depends on broader economic fundamentals such as inflation, economic growth, productivity, foreign reserves, fiscal policy, and monetary stability. For Iraq, the central bank has long discussed structural reforms aimed at modernizing the financial system. These include reducing reliance on cash transactions, improving banking infrastructure, stabilizing inflation, and potentially introducing lower denomination notes to facilitate daily transactions. In that context, showing a 25 dinar note alongside a 25,000 dinar note could be part of a public awareness effort, helping citizens understand how a redenomination might look in practice. However, there is no confirmed official policy stating that Iraqi citizens' wealth would suddenly increase simply because a note changes denomination. If such a transformation were to occur without corresponding economic growth, it would lead to inflationary pressures and destabilization rather than increased prosperity. Let's consider the short-term implications if Iraq were indeed preparing for a redenomination. In the immediate phase, the government and central bank would need to conduct extensive public education campaigns. Citizens would need to understand how to convert old currency to new currency, how pricing will adjust, and how to avoid confusion or exploitation during the transition. Banks would play a critical role in exchanging notes and ensuring liquidity. There could also be a temporary period of uncertainty. Businesses might hesitate to adjust pricing immediately, and consumers could be cautious in spending. In some countries that have undergone redenomination, there have been instances of rounding errors or opportunistic price increases, which can create public concern. Therefore, strong regulatory oversight would be essential. From a financial markets perspective, redenomination alone does not necessarily attract foreign investment. Investors look for macroeconomic stability, transparency, and consistent policy frameworks. Iraq has made progress in some of these areas, particularly with oil revenue management and efforts to stabilize the exchange rate, but challenges remain, including political uncertainty and structural inefficiencies. In the long term, however, a well-executed redenomination could contribute to a more efficient economy, Lower denomination notes make transactions simpler, reduce the need for large stacks of cash, and can improve the perception of the currency both domestically and internationally. This is especially relevant for a country like Iraq, where high denomination notes are currently the norm for everyday transactions. Another key point to consider is the role of digital banking and financial modernization. Iraq has been gradually expanding its electronic payment systems, including mobile wallets and card-based transactions. Introducing lower denominations could complement this shift by making cash transactions more practical, while the digital infrastructure continues to develop. Now, let's address a common misconception among dinar followers. The idea that a redenomination will automatically lead to a massive increase in exchange rate value is not supported by historical evidence. Countries that have redenominated their currencies, such as Turkey, Brazil, and Zimbabwe, did so to stabilize their monetary systems, not to create sudden wealth for currency holders. In fact, if Iraq were to redenominate, the exchange rate would likely be adjusted proportionally. For example, if the current exchange rate is around 1,300 dinars to $1, a 1,000 to 1 redenomination would result in a new rate of approximately 1.3 dinars to $1. The relative value remains the same. Only the numerical representation changes. This distinction is crucial for anyone following the Iraqi dinar as a potential investment. Currency value is driven by economic strength, not by the number of zeros on a banknote. Sustainable appreciation would require consistent economic growth, diversification beyond oil revenues, improved governance, and integration into global financial systems. Let's also consider the messaging aspect of the claim. If Iraqi citizens were indeed shown such a comparison, it could be part of a broader communication strategy. Governments often use visual aids to explain complex financial reforms in simple terms. Showing a large note alongside a smaller one can help people conceptualize how their money will look after redenomination. However, without official confirmation from the Central Bank of Iraq or credible government sources, it's important to treat such claims with caution. Misinformation can spread quickly, especially in online communities, and can lead to unrealistic expectations. From a policy standpoint, Iraq has been focused on maintaining exchange rate stability in recent years. The central bank has taken steps to manage the gap between official and parallel market rates, including tighter controls on foreign currency transactions and efforts to increase transparency in the banking sector. These measures are aimed at strengthening confidence in the dinar, which is a prerequisite for any major monetary reform. If a redenomination were to be implemented, it would likely be announced well in advance, with clear guidelines and timelines. There would be a transition period during which both old and new notes are accepted, followed by a gradual phase-out of the old currency. This process can take months or even years, depending on the scale of the reform. For Iraqi citizens, the key takeaway is that redenomination does not change the real value of their savings. It is a technical adjustment designed to improve the functionality of the currency. For international observers and dinar holders, it's a reminder to focus on fundamental economic indicators rather than symbolic changes. In terms of purchasing power, real improvement comes from lower inflation, higher incomes, and increased availability of goods and services. Iraq's economic outlook is closely tied to oil prices, government spending, and ongoing reforms. While there is potential for growth, it is likely to be gradual rather than sudden. It's also worth noting that currency reforms often coincide with broader economic strategies. These can include fiscal reforms, anti-corruption measures, and efforts to diversify the economy. In Iraq's case, initiatives to develop sectors such as agriculture, industry, and tourism could play a role in strengthening the dinar over time. As we evaluate this claim, the most balanced conclusion is that the visual comparison of a 25 0 note and a 25 note likely relates to the concept of redenomination rather than a direct increase in wealth or purchasing power. While such a reform could have positive long-term effects if implemented correctly, It does not represent an immediate financial gain for currency holders. For those following Iraqi dinar developments, the best approach is to stay informed through credible sources, understand the difference between redenomination and revaluation, and keep expectations grounded in economic reality. Speculation can be tempting, but informed analysis provides a more reliable perspective. In the coming months, it will be important to watch for official statements from the Central Bank of Iraq, as well as indicators such as inflation rates, foreign reserves, and progress in financial sector reforms. These factors will provide a clearer picture of the direction of Iraq's monetary policy. To sum up, the idea that a 25,000 dinar note could become a 25 dinar note reflects a potential redenomination scenario, not a sudden increase in purchasing power. Any real change in the value of the currency would depend on broader economic conditions and policy decisions. As always, separating fact from speculation is key to understanding what's truly happening in the Iraqi economy. Thank you for watching Iraqi Dinar News. If you want to stay updated with responsible, factual, and unbiased analysis, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. This content is provided for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice.